Hello RPGamers and welcome to the second episode of An Hour to Impress. Today we'll be taking a look at Saturday Morning RPG, a game by Mighty Rabbit Studios that's heavily inspired by the 1980s and 1990s. Get ready to relive your childhood. So if you grew up in the 90s like I did, this game is going to fill you with an immediate sense of nostalgia. I grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons as a child, and the references to those classics are all over the place. Right off the bat, you'll see G.I. Joe reference with Commander Hood, who's a clear imitation of Commander Cobra from that show. You'll also see the Wizard, who I'm guessing is a reference to the horrible 1990s Fred Savage movie that was basically an hour and a half long advertisement for Super Mario Bros. 3. And I'm basing that entirely on the fact that the kid seems to be wearing a power glove. You're also introduced to Marty, your main character, who is, I'm guessing, is also a reference to Marty McFly from the Back to the Future movies. And not just because his name is Marty, but because of something very familiar he rides later on in the game. So after you get your face stomped in by Commander Hood a couple of times, the Wizard shows up and gives you your magical notebook. And this is kind of the centerpiece of the game's mechanics. This magical notebook has the ability to turn any item it touches into a weapon of nostalgia-driven power. And everything about it is just reeks of classic 1990s grade school shenanigans. You got your ridiculous covers, you got your stickers all over it. Of course, and you just fill it with all your information and things like that. It's a great little mechanic that just adds to the flavor of the game. Combat is turn-based and very similar to the Super Mario RPG series. Every attack, or at least most attacks in the game, have little mini-games attached to them. And you have to hit a button at the right time or in the right order in order to maximize your damage and not miss your attack outright. You can also use batteries to charge up your attacks. Every time you use a battery, it drains your blue MP bar, but at the same time it increases your damage multiplier, which in turn increases the damage that you deal with your next attack. These also have minigames attached to them, but there's also one that doesn't have a minigame attached to them. And as you go through the game, you'll also find attacks that don't require minigames, which is a nice touch in case you don't particularly like that kind of mechanics. I know not everyone is particularly fond of the Paper Mario series, and I'm one of those people, and that's primarily why I find those kinds of mechanics kind of obnoxious. So that's one nice aspect of this game that should make it easier to swallow for certain players. The game also has a number of customization options, and all of these have something to do with the notebook. The first of these is the scratch and sniff stickers that you can collect. And by scratching these at the start of battle, these give you a temporary power-up bonus, which can either affect you or affect your enemies, and they're all quite useful. And it offers up a nice little way to personalize your notebook as the game goes on. You can also change the cover design of your notebook, and like the scratch and sniff stickers, this offers a nice little flat bonus to your stats, depending on which cover you choose. Finally, you can change up your inventory loadout, and this changes which attacks are available at any time during battle. You can have up to 5 weapons equipped, and there's a huge variety throughout the game. I mean, just in this first episode alone, during my first hour, I saw probably about a dozen total different attacks to experiment with. So I can only imagine that in the future episodes there's even more to discover and play around with. We're coming up now to the first boss fight against Madeline. I'm not sure what she is a reference to, presumably some sort of 1980s or 1990s cartoon show, but whatever it is, it escapes me. It must have been something I didn't watch when I was a kid. But in any case, now that we're at a boss fight, I'm going to slow the video down a little bit and show you some of the different things that happen in the battle now that we can take a closer look at it. The first thing you're going to see is the scratch and sniff system at play. At the start of every battle, you have a couple of seconds to quickly scratch all your stickers and gain as many power-up bonuses as you can. Once the battle starts, you'll see me right off the bat using the damage multiplying battery charging technique, which is always very useful. And you'll see me using 5 different types of attacks over the course of the battle. So I'm just going to go over those one by one. The first is the Care Bear Stare, which is just a giant rainbow blast that goes out of Marty's chest, and is an obvious reference for anyone who grew up on that particular show. Second is the Michael Jackson glove, which sees Marty do a little moonwalk and then slap his enemy in the face. After that, there's the basketball, which burns an enemy after he throws it at it, which I'm assuming is some sort of reference to the classic Super Nintendo game NBA Jam. And there's also a rainbow belt, which I have honestly no idea what it's a reference to. The closest thing I can think of would be like Richard Simmons or something like that. But in any case, this is basically a damage shield. It gives Marty a temporary damage shield that the enemy has to break before it can hit his health points. The final item is the giant cookie, which Marty quickly devours in order to gain back some of his health. After the boss fight, I leveled up for the first time, and at every level you're able to increase one of your stats permanently by 1 point. Compared to the other customization options the game has, this is kind of simplistic, but it is just one more choice you can make to help develop your character in whichever way you want. Saturday Morning RPG also has a couple of side quests to embark in. The first episode has 2. The first one is a simple collection quest in which you have to find all the jerks and collect them for some sort of monster that wants to eat them, which is a pretty horrifying task in and of itself. But the other one is much more interesting, and this one involves exploring a magic cave, which seems kind of generic until you realize what it is that Marty is riding. Yes, that is a pink hoverboard, which is just one more reason why I like to assume that Marty's last name is McFly. Inside the magic cave, you'll discover a computer named Computa, which tasks you with finding the other computers and stopping all the downloading, which I imagine is some sort of reference to the hilarious 1990s anti-piracy campaigns, like Don't Copy That Floppy. So this is the second boss fight of the first episode of Saturday Morning RPG, and the battle is against Skeletor and his pink dog Taco. The references here are much easier to figure out. Skeletor is clearly talking about Skeletor from the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe series, while the pink dog Taco, I imagine, is some sort of reference to the hilarious 1990s Taco Bell ads. I've gotten a couple of new weapons at this point in the game, which I'll just talk about really quickly. The first is the floppy disk, which basically strikes the enemy with bad code, while the other one is a compass, that fun little tool that you might remember from being a kid that lets you draw a perfect circle. This item is rather amusing as it just basically cuts a giant hole in the ground around the enemy and lets them drop through it. This boss fight was more than a little bit annoying. The biggest issue I had with it is the fact that Skeletor heals himself multiple times over the course of the fight. This was just annoying and needlessly dragged the whole thing out. And in particular, it basically caused me to waste a lot of weapons. Unfortunately, one of the game's mechanics is that each weapon has a number of uses. You can use it every battle. And while it's totally okay in most fights, during this boss fight, and in particular the next boss fight, it becomes a major issue. I nearly ran out of weapons in this fight, and in the next one you'll see that I do completely run out of weapons, and it slows everything down dramatically. One of this game's cooler visual effects is the various flourishes the different weapons do when you beat an enemy. You'll see here that when I beat Skellebore, the floppy disk causes the blue screen of death to appear over top of them. And all the other weapons have various different flourishes that are based around whatever they happen to be. The compass makes the enemy drop permanently from the screen. The Michael Jackson glove causes the enemy to explode in a flash of light. And the Care Bear stare just launches a torrent of rainbows that utterly obliterate its target. This is just a really neat sort of addition to the game that just kind of makes it a lot more fun to use various different types of attacks over the course of the game so that you can see what these different flourishes all look like. The final boss fight of Saturday Morning RPG's first episode is against Commander Hood. And this is a fight where you start to see some of the game's problems come into focus. I mentioned this during the Skellebore fight, but the limited quantities of the various weapons that you can collect does become a problem during these longer fights. And by the end of the fight, I did end up running out of weapons entirely and had to rely on the punches, which is Marty's default attack. And these do not do a whole lot of damage, and it just needlessly prolonged the boss fight. Once you've defeated Commander Hood, you come to the end of Saturday Morning RPG's first episode. When I started this game, I did not realize that it was episodic, but given the premise, it makes a lot of sense. After the cutscenes play, you get back out into a main menu where you can manually select your different episodes and replay old ones or play new ones as you see fit. Episode 1 took me almost exactly an hour to complete, so I didn't really have very much time to jump into Episode 2. So I think we're going to wrap up this video here. I'm pretty sure I will go back and play the later episodes of Saturday Morning RPG eventually. This is the sort of episodic game that just seems like it's going to be a lot of fun to play. There's a lot of potential for variety between episodes, and there's a huge birth of nostalgia-driven 1990s programming to draw from. If you have any comments or suggestions for games you'd like to see highlighted in this series, please leave them below. I did use a new editing technique for this episode, so if you like it, please leave your comments below. And if you prefer episode 1's editing techniques, also mention that. I'm trying to improve this as much as I can, and your feedback is very much appreciated. Saturday Morning RPG is currently available on Steam for $7.79 Canadian, and it will be coming soon to the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita. Thanks for watching.